Hello and welcome to this little Christmas colouring tutorial. I've got a beautiful digital stamp here by Connie Fong on Etsy, and if you want to get exactly the same stamp, I will leave the link in the description below for you to go ahead and buy it from her store. I'm going to be using Prismacolor pencils, my pencil of choice, but of course if you want to colour along you can use whatever pencils you like. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to colour her face first, so her skin, and the colours that I've chosen for that are cream, nectar, light peach and raspberry for a little bit of blush. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the nectar pencil, which is PC 1092, and I'm going to go and find all of my shadow areas. So just under the hair here where shadow would naturally fall, we'll put a bit of nectar, and then just under the eyebrow and down the side here. And then just under the eye and around this corner of the gift. You don't have to go too heavy with your pencil at the moment, so just keep it nice and light. We're just figuring out where the shadows are at the moment. Now the great thing about colouring digi-stamps is they're quite small and you don't have to be so precise with things like the skin tone. So you can really just colour block in some instances, and you don't need to use as many pencils. It's just easy because you're just trying to get the look of skin, not, you know, some perfect realism. So I'm just going to bring in some shadows here, maybe a little bit of shadow under the lip, and then she will also have some on her neck there, and then just here, and again just following the line of the eyebrow and underneath where the hair is falling on the face, and under this bit as well. So the only other place now that I'm going to put a shadow is just here on the outside curvature of the nose. So I want a little bit of shadow there. And then our next colour is that light peach. So I'm going to fill in the majority of the rest of the face now. And as I'm going over with light peach, I'm also blending it into the nectar. So you'll notice that it starts to get really nice and blended and smooth looking. That's the kind of look we're going for, a nice smooth blended skin tone. So just going over all of your shadow areas first, and then that will leave you with an area in the central portion of the face that you can decide how far you want to come with the light peach. I'll explain better in a moment. So another thing about digital stamps that is great for a spot of colouring is that they're really quick. So you haven't got this huge great page, but you've still got lots of detail to colour. It's all been done on a smaller scale, and it's just nice to get a little bit of colouring done once in a while and have a bit of an achievement factor, but without having to put hours and hours into it. So you can see how the light peach has acted as a blender for the nectar, and that's kind of what you do when you're blending. You use your next lightest colour to blend the previous one. So I barely ever use blending pencils because I just use the next lightest colour, and I think that that's the best way of doing it because you're not getting rid of any of the pigment from the previous colours that you've put down. The pigment is still there, because sometimes colourless blenders can bleach the colour a little bit, and even if you use a white pencil to blend, it can end up looking a bit milky and it really desaturates the pigment. So best thing to do really is to just use the next lightest colour as your blending tool, and you'll end up with something that looks a little bit like this. So I'm just looking at it now, taking a step back, and I'm thinking that I want to just bring the light peach down a little because I think we've left just too much white space in the centre of the face. So using a light hand, I'm just going to bring a little bit more of this light peach into the centre of the face. Until we've got sort of about that much coverage going on. So we're left with a nice little area in the centre, and that's where the cream comes in. So nobody has really got a perfectly cream skin tone, but this just serves as our highlight. And as I said, this isn't meant to be a realistic skin tutorial. This is a quick and effective skin method for smaller things like digital stamps. So I'm filling in the rest of the face with the cream. Now don't worry if it looks a bit odd that we've all of a sudden got this yellowish colour going on in the centre of the face. We are going to go over it very lightly with the light peach, but putting it down and having it as the base layer will serve to lighten the light peach that we put over the top, so it won't be as dark or as saturated as it was where we used it just on its own. So as I said, coming back in with the light peach and doing a really light all over layer on top of that cream that we've just put down. I'm also using this just to blend any areas of the nectar that we've missed, and just generally want to make it look smooth as possible. So when you're sort of happy-ish with what you've done, you're never fully happy if you're anything like me, but when you're happy-ish with the placement of the colours and things like that, and you think that there's not too much cream, I mean, if you think there is, you can go over again with the light peach like I'm doing now, or you can just leave it as is. Totally up to you to kind of gauge what you need to do. But when you've done that, that's when we can come in with the raspberry and give her a little bit of blush. So very, very light hand, and what I would recommend you do before you go anywhere near her with the raspberry is just get some scrap paper and just scribble a little, just a few times, and that will create a slanted blunt edge on the tip of your pencil, because we don't want any harsh lines. We just want a really blunt, smooth, barely there blush. So very light hand, the lightest pressure you can manage, and just go over the cheeks, the apples of the cheeks where you would see some blush. And as I said, it's very, very light. And I'll just bring it in here as well. Just down from where the cheekbone would naturally be. And it will look a little odd at the moment, a little bit like a burn, but we will blend that out. So that is the blush. So we'll grab hold of the nectar again and go over that just to soften it so that it doesn't look as harsh and as red. Now again, if needed, you can come back in with your light peach and blend that nectar out and do an all over sweep onto that blush, and that will really help to desaturate the red and blend it into the skin. So you can see now she's got a nice little blush. Isn't too harsh, but it warms up the face really nicely. So I'm just going to lift the page a little bit, because as you all know by now, I've got an overhead light that creates lots of glare on wax pencils. So if I just lift it up a little bit, you can see the smoothness of that skin tone. It looks a little bit sort of speckly when it's just flat like that, but I'll lift it up and you can see the smoothness there. Okay, so while we're here, we'll just quickly do her little hands. So again, with the nectar, I'm just going to come here where the shadows would naturally fall. So she's holding a gift, and that means we'd have some shadowing here. and we can bring that down just underneath the thumb. Again, this is a little cartoon character, so you don't need to be realistic. You don't need to worry about where shadows would actually fall, and be very precise with it. So we'll just do little bits here and there. And then here again with our light peach to blend. I don't think you'll need an awful lot of cream on this because it is a very small space, but I'll add a little bit in anyway just to tie it in with the face, and it just lifts the skin a little bit. Lots and lots of debris off these pencils. I need a new pencil brush because I ended up using it to sweep cobwebs off the skirting boards when I was doing some painting. So it's no longer suitable for colouring use. So I really need another one of those. Okay, so really, I'm just going to leave that as it is. I don't think we need to over-engineer it. And then we'll move on to the hat. So I'm going to start on the fluffy bits of the hat, and for that I just need 2 greys. I'm going to go into the cool grey family. We've got 50% and 10% cool grey. And we're going to start off with the darker of the two, the 50%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flick downwards from the top of this fluffy bit, and I'm going to flick upwards from the bottom. So we'll get a sort of jaggedy look that sort of lends itself to a furry, feathery, soft material. So again, with the darker of the colours, and you might want to just twist your page a little bit because it's easier for the hand to do this kind of motion than anything else. So I'm just going to move my washi tape and twist the page a little bit, making sure you're still in view. And then, like I said, we'll start from the tip of the top of the furry bit and we'll bring in some lines. Now it's very important that your pencil is super sharp because we want some very defined lines here, and we are not making them all the same length. We're being very varied with it. It will look really jagged and make some of them longer than others and protrude further into the centre of the fur. And again, if you do feel like it's getting a bit blunt, sharpen it, or just keep rotating the pencil to get the sharpest edge. Okay, and as I said, we're going to start from the bottom now and flick upwards. So I'm going to turn it all the way around and then do exactly the same thing, flicking upward and not meeting in the middle, but still varying our lines. So you can see how some are much longer than others. You can go back in and just lengthen some of them if you want to. But again, you don't have to be precise with it, you know, just have fun. We're just trying to create a texture here in the most rudimentary way possible. There's no skill or technique. I suppose there is technique, but anyone can do it, and it just creates the look of it. That's what we're going for. So keep rotating, keep that pencil sharp. And there's just a little bit here above the gift box that we haven't done. So I'll just pop that in. And that looks about right to me. You can have another look, see if you want to extend or lengthen any of them. But that looks pretty good. So get your lighter grey now. This is the 10% cool grey. And go over everything you've just done. This is going to desaturate the darker grey that we used, and it's also going to blend and look really nice and fluffy and soft. So you can meet in the middle this time if you want to. I quite like leaving some white space in the centre if possible, because it just adds to highlighted look. So you're going over all of those dark grey strokes, and in some instances you're dragging out that dark grey a little bit with this pencil, not intentionally, but it adds to the look and it just makes it look a little bit more layered. It gives a bit more dimension. We'll do exactly the same thing to the bottom. And do you see the difference that that has made just using this lighter grey? And it's just made it look so much more fluffy and dynamic. So I'm just going over some of the more harsher dark grey lines that I've missed, just to really maximise that blend and fluffiness. And again, you can go back in, do some little shorter ones that flick here and there to add to the look. I keep saying add to the look, but that's what we're doing. We're just doing silly little things that are very quick and easy, but they look really cool at the end of it. So that is how I would tackle fur on, you know, like a fur trim or a lining on clothing, which is really handy for, you know, a lot of different colouring books and pages. We often have fur lining and trim on clothes. And of course we've got to do the rest of the fur trim on this page. So I'm going to go in and do her bobble hat and her collar and her sleeves. Okay, let's do some poinsettia now. I think that's how you say it. That's these lovely Christmas flowers down here. I've got the Crimson Lake pencil and Carmine Red, so PC 925 and 926. We're going to do a little bit of a straight blend here on the poinsettia petals. So I'm using the darker, the Crimson Lake, to come in here at the very inner corner of the petal and just drag it out towards the centre of the petal itself. So it sort of elongates in the centre and gets wider at the bottom. Then we're going to bring in the Carmine Red and continue that blend almost all the way to the top of the leaf, just leaving a little bit of a white tip to give a bit of highlight. But it's really very, very easy. We're just doing a basic blend here. So I'll bring some of that carmine in just on this side. It's a little peeping part of the petal that's overlapped by the next one. And maybe I'll even just bring in a little bit more Crimson Lake on that blend line. So I'll do another one. Do this big leaf here so you can see, rather petal, not leaf. So really quite wide at the bottom as it comes out from the centre, and then just tapering into that central line. And the Carmine Red, not quite touching the edges of the petal. And there we are. So I'm just going to do the rest of them and I will meet you back here in a moment. Okay, so now we've created a nice velvety look to the petals, we will tackle the leaves. So the two colours that I've got are dark green PC 908 and Kelly green PC 1096, which is a little bit of a desaturated green, because they're not very bright leaves, these poinsettia leaves. So we'll start again with the dark green just in the centre of the leaf. It's a very, very similar technique, if not the same actually. I'm not really working on getting these looking anything like real leaves. It is just me blending basically. So that is what we're going for. So again, just extending it up out of the center line of the leaf all the way up the middle, and then using our Kelly green to blend out toward the edge. But I would advise again to leave a little bit of white just right on the edge, and it just gives that little look of curvature and 3-dimension. So again, maybe scale back the use of too much of the darker colour. I think I probably did a little bit too much dark there. So I'll just scale it back here and let the Kelly green take precedence on the leaf. I'm just putting a little bit of the dark green in where I think the blend line is, and it just needs touching up a little. And then I'll do the rest. Okay, so I want to jump straight back to the hair now. So I'm sort of all over the place with this, but bear with me. So for the hair, I want to do a lovely black. And whenever I'm doing black hair, I always include a blue as well, a very dull blue. I've got periwinkle here, which is PC 1025. So what I'm going to do first of all is make sure my pencil is super, super sharp. And then just like I did with the fur, really, I'm just going to flick in some lines from the bottom of the hair, and then just following the strands that Connie has left for us. So just following those strands up as far as the flick sort of allows, really. There's no mathematical way of describing it. Just flick up and get some jagged lines going. Just exactly like we did with the fur, really. And then from here, just underneath the fringe, just flick down a little bit, so that you end up with a bit of space in the centre. Again, exactly like the fur. Try not to leave too much space though, because there isn't an awful lot of blue in black hair. It's just a little bit. So that's all we want to see really, is that kind of slight sprinkle of blue. That makes no sense. So I'll just bring in a few more of these lines up a little bit. And then once we've got just a little bit of space in the centre, that's when I'll bring in the periwinkle blue. So I'm just going over the white space that we've left, and it just adds a bit of shine to the black without it being white. So we've got a highlight going on, but it's not stark, because black hair would not have a white highlight. So it might look just a little bit blue, or maybe it won't, but it's effective anyway. So just adding in the periwinkle there. And again, because of the light, I don't know whether this is showing properly, but I'll just tilt it, and it does create a really nice look. So I'll just do exactly the same on the rest of the hair. Just dragging in some of the black with the periwinkle. And then of course, as usual, go back in with the black if you want to deepen some of the lines that have lost their boldness. Very, very sharp pencil for hair strands. And then continue with the rest of the hair. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Next up, let's tackle the clothing. So she's Mrs. Claus, so I'm going to go red, and I'm going to pull out that Crimson Lake pencil again, and this time I'm going to be using permanent red and pale vermilion. So we're going to go an orangey route, whereas the poinsettia was very red and pinkish. We're going to go kind of orangey with the clothing, just to make that differentiation. So I'm going to colour all around the bottom part of the hat here, just at the top of the fur that we've coloured, and I'm just using scumbling circular motions because we're just adding in shadow here, so just underneath where this holly is protruding, and then a little bit up here. Making sure that you get underneath the holly as well, and then we'll go above this line with some shadow, and maybe just a little around the top of the holly as well, and then making sure this corner down here is nice and dark. So those are the shadows of our hat. Then we can come in with our permanent red, PC 122, and again just elongating those areas, thickening those areas that we've put the darkest colour, just like we did with the skin really. So I'm just pulling this up, leaving us with ever decreasing space on the hat to fill. Making sure that we're keeping the general shape of the shadow that we put down in the first instance. So when you've got about that much left on your hat, you can come in with your pale vermilion and fill it in. So this, even though it is an orange, it is a reddish orange, so it isn't going to make the clothes look, you know, really, really orange. It's just going to act as a highlight colour for the reds. And because it is so different to the poinsettia, it will contrast a little bit and not look as samey. Technical jargon there. But yeah, it just helps to have different shades if you're using the same colour family on one picture. So once you're happy with the blend, that's what it should look like, something like that. And then we can move on to the rest of the costume. So again, just using your Crimson Lake to plot the shadows first. So I'm going to bring some shadow down here on her arm. And also down this side of the arm, just leaving a little bit of space between here and the line of the arm, because that will sort of give us that curved look again. And then we can bring this right down to the line here, and that will create the 3D look that we want. So maybe just put a little bit of shadow here as well, just in that corner. And then underneath where her hand is sitting, because of course that would cast a shadow, under here as well. And then her arm is overlapping on the skirt of the dress that she's wearing, so they would have some shadow under there as well. So I'm going to pop this pretty much all into shadow, this little bit here and under here as well. So even though we have got two sort of red things on our image, it's okay because it also keeps it cohesive. We're not using too many different colours, so it all ties in nicely. So again, just bringing some shadow under the arm and under her belt here. I think that will do. So then the permanent red, extending, but always keeping in mind that we want to leave some space for our lightest colour. So there might not be any space in certain areas because it's just too small, but there's no science to it. Just put it where you think you can, and if you can't, then you can't. It should still have the overall look that we're trying to achieve. So finally, the pale vermilion straight the way across this white area and down. See, I've gone straight out the lines, down the arm and then in here. This would probably actually be a little bit darker here, so I might add in a bit of shadow. Just filling in these areas super neatly, as you can tell. And there we go. So if there are any little speckly bits of tooth that you haven't filled, you can use this as your blender and your burnisher and just fill those in. And as I say, always come back in with more of the other colours if you feel it needs it. So it's probably a little bit too orange, this bit. I probably left a bit too much room, so I'm going to push the orange back a little bit with the permanent red, and as I say, just add more shadow under there. And like I've said, it's just, you have to gauge it really. It depends how big you've printed it, depends how much colour you've put down in what area. It's going to look different to mine. So yeah, I think that'll do. So looking good so far. Let's just fill in the black of the belt. I've just seen that we haven't done her lips and eyes yet, so I'm going to come in with that raspberry colour that we used for the blush on the cheeks, and I'm going to fill in her top lip. So just completely fill that in with the raspberry. And then the bottom lip I usually do a little bit lighter because it kind of protrudes out more than the top lip, so it catches the light a little bit more. So let's grab the light peach that we used for her skin. Just pop a bit of that on there and then a bit of the nectar around it. And we'll still be in keeping with the natural tones of her skin, you see, because we're using the same pencils. And I think I will just add a little touch of raspberry, very, very slight bit here, to the lip so that it doesn't look too different. And hopefully you can see that just looks nice and subtle. Nice little subtle lip colour. Can never resist just messing around with it a little bit more. Terrible. But yeah, that's okay. Now the eyes. So I want to use a colour that is also on here. Obviously I can't use a red for the eyes, look a bit scary. It's supposed to be Christmas, not Krampus. So maybe I'll use green. We have the Kelly green, don't we? That might be quite nice. Let's also grab that dark green, because even though she's got small irises, I still want to put a bit of difference in the lighter and the darker tones. So we don't have a lot to work with here, but I'm just going to fill these little bits at the edge with the dark green. And then bring the Kelly green all the way across the bottom. So now that we've done that, the pupils aren't black enough, so we have to go in with our black. I would recommend using a pen or a fine liner for this, because pencils in very small areas can often crumble and just ruin the whole thing. So I'm just going to use the smaller end of a Tombow just to fill in the pupil. But make sure if you are doing this with a pen, you do it last, because if you go in with any pencil after this, you will probably drag the ink, and that's not good. And with a really fine black pen, I'm just going to come in on those eyelashes and deepen them a little bit more. I'm going to turn her around as well because I can't really do it from that angle. And while I'm here, I might as well fill in her brow. Nice. So it's always good just to redefine some of the lines after you've used coloured pencil, because it can kind of wash them out sometimes. Also got my trusty Arteza white gel pen, just to make sure that those highlights in the eyes are as crisp as possible. I might also add just a little dash to the lip. Okay, so now for the holly leaves, I'm going to use a couple of different greens. So I've got olive green PC911 and lime peel PC1005. And I'm going to follow the lines of the holly this time. So just going straight to the top and then following the lines so that we have the skeleton of the leaf. And then with the lime peel, again, just blending it out. I wish I had more sort of techniques to show you, but it's very, very simple how I colour. And then I'm coming back in with the olive green just to blur those lines out very slightly so they don't look as crisp. Might be a good idea to also outline the holly leaf with the olive green, making sure that it's really sharp. The only thing about these Prismacolors is they're so crumbly. Should have probably used polychromos for something as small as this, but you live and learn. So I've outlined the leaf as well. Yeah, I think that looks better. So it kind of looks like the leaf is convex either side. I'll do exactly the same thing on the rest of the leaves. So for these berries on the holly, I've got that raspberry pencil again. So we're tying everything in with the same colours, and I'm just outlining each berry. And then I'm going to very lightly fill in the centre, but very lightly. So we've got a really hard outline around the berry, but then we're just lightly filling in the centres. This creates a look of shine without actually having to use any other pencil or any highlights. So I'm quite happy with that. I might come in and add a little bit of white gel pen shine to it later on. I don't know, I'll see how I feel. But next we're going to do these presents. Now, because we have got a lot of red and we've got lots of green, I thought let's pick out the only other colour that we have used on this, which is a blue tone, and we'll use it on the presents. Now, I'm not going to go straight back to the periwinkle that we used, but I am going to use blues. So I've got Copenhagen blue, true blue and non-photo blue. So we've got a darker, medium and a light again. So I'm going to start from the bottom of the gift here with the darker colour, the Copenhagen, and bring it up from the bottom. Come in with the true blue, blend it out, and then our non-photo blue at the top. We've got a really quick and easy graduated blend there, and it definitely pops out more. It's a lot brighter and more saturated than the periwinkle that we used in the hair, but it's still in keeping with that same colour family, and it also does serve to push back that periwinkle a little and not make it look so blue, which is great. That's exactly what we're going for. So I'm going to do all of the presents in the same colour because I do want to keep to a limited palette as far as I can. So let's just do exactly the same thing to these. And again, because it is a digi-stamp, we don't have a lot of colouring to do. There's not a huge amount of space to fill, so it's very quick, which is a really good thing sometimes when we just don't want to colour a lot. If you have something that's sat next to something else, we don't really want it to be the same colour because we want to create a contrast. So because we've got the lid of the box here, that's why I'm colouring this bow in blue. And then the lid of the box can be whatever colour we decide for the ribbon on the other boxes. Now the big present she's holding in her hands, again we're just bringing some shadow in. And then our mid-tone, the true blue. And then finally non-photo blue. You see how quick I'm colouring and I'm filling in these areas because it's so small and it's so quick and it's really satisfying. If you did this in markers, it'd be even quicker. I was thinking about doing this in Copics actually, but I don't have the right shades. I've got quite a few Copics, but not a lot in the general scheme of how many colours there are, so I didn't quite have the shades that I wanted to use for this. But yes, if you do have markers, any kind of markers really, it would definitely be faster than doing it in pencil. Okay, now for the ribbons, I think I was gonna do gold and then I was gonna do silver, but I think silver would look too much like the fur trim. So I didn't really want to add any more colours into this, but I think I will have to do gold. We can do gold on her belt buckle, gold on the ribbons, and we can also make these baubles gold as well, so it'll hopefully all tie in nicely. So I've got my go-to gold combo here: burnt ochre, yellow ochre, canary yellow goldenrod. I might not use all of those because again it is a very small area, but I'll do my best. So burnt ochre is the darkest of all the colours, and that's where I'm going to do some of the shadows on the ribbon. In fact, I might even do the underneath of the ribbon here, so the inside of the loops, just to make that really nice and dark. And then I can use the rest of the goldy colours on the top parts of the bow. So I'll just fill those in really super quick. No shading or anything, just block filled. And then the next colour is the goldenrod. So I'll just, again, just bringing up bits from the bottom, bits of colour, and trying to create the look of shine on this ribbon. So maybe I'll go just to the bottom edges of the ribbon, just like this, so we can see where the light would shine on it. Always best as well, if you can, just to leave a gap towards the edge, but very, very difficult on these small areas. And I do have the yellow ochre. Might be able to get just a little bit of this in, because we have to leave room for the canary yellow, which is the brightest of all four colours and will really make this gold pop. So just grabbing the canary yellow now and filling that in, again using it as a blender here and there. And I might just add a little bit of that burnt ochre to the bottom of where we put the goldenrod, just for a little bit of shadow. So that's about as best as I can get gold on such a small area. I think it still looks nice, still looks effective. So we'll do the same thing on the rest of the ribbon. So I'm going through all the colours in turn, dark to light, finally ending with the canary yellow, and I'll just fill in that gap. Now the yellow will also create a really nice contrast with the blue, so it again will give us a pop that we need. I'm just going to bring back the burnt ochre a little with a light hand. We don't need a lot of it. Just in case you're getting that glare from the light again, I'll just tilt it so you can see how it really looks so far. And we'll do exactly the same thing down here on these ribbons. Okay, so using the same colours for these baubles, these ornaments down under here, I'm going to create a little bit of a look of roundness to this by using that darker colour right away from the edge to create a little bit of dimension. So I've got it with quite a considerable gap between that and the edge, and I'll kind of follow this all the way around. And then bring in our other colours, so the goldenrod next, and the yellow ochre, and finally the canary yellow in the centre. We'll also use the canary yellow around that edge that we left, and that will give us a little bit of a look of roundness. It's not perfect, but it looks okay. So I'll do the same thing on the other ones. Okay, so we've got a little bit of what looks like mistletoe at the bottom. So I've grabbed the 10% cool grey that we used on the fir trim, and I'm just going to outline these exactly the same as I did up there with the berries. And in fact, I'll just colour them in, I'll just fill them in, and then I can come and outline them maybe with a little bit of that darker grey, just to show that they are practically white berries. I think they're a little bit creamish, aren't they? Mistletoe berries. What would happen if we put a bit of cream in? Nothing. Okay, so if I just grab that darker grey and just outline them slightly. Pencil should be sharper than this, really. At least we're not leaving them the perfect white of the page. We're giving them a little bit of dimension. Might not be perfect colours, but that's okay. So I've just done a little bit of an outline around them like that. Coming back in with the lighter grey to lighten the dark that we just put down. I know we've just put it down and now we're trying to sort of erase it a little bit, but it just lightens it. And then we'll just have the same green that we used up on the holly just to tie that in. So we used the olive green, didn't we? Let's just pop that in the centre of these mistletoe leaves. I assume it's mistletoe, it looks like mistletoe, doesn't it? So I'll pop that in the centre, just again, loving how quick I can fill in gaps on this really small design. I think that is it. Yep, and then it was the lime peel, wasn't it, that we used for the holly. So just fill in the rest of those leaves. I'll come back in with the olive green just to smooth out a few of those lines, or maybe I'll make it look a little bit liney for texture. No idea if mistletoe leaves are this colour or this pattern, so to speak, but there we go. So I think, oh, we've got the centre of the poinsettia. I'm not entirely sure. It might be white actually, but I tell you what, I'm just going to put cream in there, just to give it a little bit of colour. It's sort of dragged the carmine red a little bit, but hey ho, not bothered. So that's it, we're finished. I really hope that you've enjoyed watching me colour this. I'm going to stand up and then show it to you out of the light so that you can hopefully see it without any glare. Really pleased with how it's turned out, and it's just a little quick bit of colouring that looks really cool and effective. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon on Colour with Claire.